Isn't it funny, those moments of rebellion, like early on, that
Mm-hmm.
really sit with you? Like, it felt so good. It plants seeds for further rebellion in the future.
Well, once you get that feeling, you want it again and again, you know? Because it takes you out of everything.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I may never get out of this class. I may never finish any of these. I might not graduate. I might, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm right now, I'm throwing all this shit out the
I'm
window.
alive.
Yeah, exactly. It feels good for right now. And it's hard to reconcile that. I think that's a little bit of a comedian's like upbringing. And then you have to start being a, you know, then you have kids and it all goes away. You have kids and you grow right out. Whatever's left, I think, when you have kids. I mean, not for everybody. There's some real douchebag parents. But for the most part, I think once the kids come, you know, it's not about you anymore. It's
Right.
about them. So.
And it's also it's bizarre watching them go through it. Them going through, like, trying to find their identity and trying to find their friends group and little disputes that they have in their friends group.
Yeah.
Like, one of my daughters has this one little daughter, one little friend rather, who's, I don't want to say she's evil, but something's wrong. Something's wrong. She's just like always like very mean to the other girls and very insulting, and for whatever reason, this girl just has like this fire inside of her, and all the other 12-year-olds are starting to figure it out now, so they're starting to separate from her. Like, they gave her a few chances,
Right.
and so now the mom is contacting the other moms, like, "What's wrong? She's such a sweet girl." I'm like, "No, your daughter's kind of a cunt." And it's like this, it's weird. And then, you know, me and my wife are having this conversation. I'm like, "Do you think it's the mom? Like, who do you like, where's this coming from? Do you think it's the family? Like, how does a daughter get to be so insulting and shitty?"
Yeah.
You got to learn that. You can't just be like the sweetest, kindest person in the world and have this fucking hyper aggressive,
No, something's
shitty
going
baby.
on. I mean, there's people like, I remember there was a kid when I grew up, and he was a mess, and he was huge. He just got really huge. In third grade, he was he was bigger than all of us. And he was a really bright kid, and he was funny and interesting, but he had this crazy temper. And he would throw these tantrums in the middle of class. Like, something would piss him off, and he'd start screaming and throwing shit, and he'd get violent. And the teacher would go to back then there was like a box on the side of the classroom wall with a clock and a speaker and a button, like a microphone, like to call the office. And they'd call the office and say, "Get Mr. Shanahan." He was our one teacher who was big enough to handle this kid. And he would come and just subdue him. He'd wrap his arms around this kid, and the kid's face would be purple. And Mr. Shanahan would just subdue him until he would just collapse. And we would all sit there and watch this. And then he'd be taken out of the classroom, and then we'd all talk about him. But like, the teacher would say, "Let's talk about it."
Yeah.
Like, what do you think's going on with John, and how do we handle this?
Oh, that's cool.
He's in our community, he's in our class.
Oh, that's a great teacher.
He was great, Mr. Weisberg, great teacher. And then I was always in John's class, 4th grade, 5th grade. And in 5th grade, we had a trip to Cape Cod. The whole 5th grade class goes in cars in a caravan, to Cape Cod, and you live in tents and you visit the cranberry bogs, whatever the fuck you do in Cape Cod. And it's a very social thing, so somebody's mom is driving, so they're like, will you come in my car? That was the cool thing. And I got invited to be in Jeff Drew's car, and I was like, this is going to be, I love Jeff Drew. It's going to be me and him and Mike McDougal. We're going to have a great time. But the teacher pulled me aside, and he said, listen, John, the fucked up kid, he goes, his parents have offered to drive, and nobody wants to drive with him. And I'm asking you to do it.
Oh, boy.
And I was like, I don't want to do that. And he said, I'm asking you because I think you're a nice person, and you're the one person I can think of that I could ask, could you make this sacrifice and let him not feel so isolated? And I was like, fuck. And that made me feel good that he wanted me to do it. And I did it. And I got to know him, and he was a really cool kid, and his parents were both professors. Really, really bright people.
Oh, wow.
His father had killed himself, but his stepfather and his mother were professors, really intelligent people.
That's probably where it came from.
I think so.
Yeah.
It was really hard. His life was really hard. And then I knew him for years after that. We were friends, but he would always explode all the way until 17 or so. The last time I saw him, he was like 16, I think. and he was still we were talking outside of a Brigham's Ice Cream in Newton Center, and he was leaning on the glass of the window, and this guy came outside and said, "Don't lean on the glass," and so he kicked it and shattered the whole window, and I walked away. I'm like, I don't ever want to see this kid again.
Oh, Jesus.
But anyway, just to say that, yeah, the point of it is I tried to stay friends with that kid. When there's a kid who's really fucked up and has a wire loose, someone's got to be their friend.
Yeah.
I don't think, it's like I've had girlfriends that are like really cuckoo, and my friends have been like, she's bad news, she's crazy. And I'm like, well, somebody has to love her. I mean, if everybody walks away from her because she's nuts, she's going to be alone.
Oh, that was always the case with Brian Callen. With Brian Callen, me and Brian Callen, like Brian Callen was always like the guy who took in all the strays.
Yeah.
He's like, everything's going to be fine. She's fine. She's fine. We're fine. And I was always, his friend going, hey, man, you got to fucking get out of this.
Right.
Like, you got to get out of this now. This is a dark road you're going down.
Sure.
This is only going to lead to doom.
Yeah.
And he was always like, hey, someone's got to be your girlfriend.
Yeah. I've had a few friendships and relationships like that.
Yes.
Where I'm like, this person's tough. Like comedian friends that I've had that everybody
Yeah.
else is like, I hate that guy. I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm staying friends with him. I get it. I'm not going to defend him all over the place, but
Oh, you're
he's
talking
gonna
to
stay
me.
my
I'm friends
friend.
with Alex Jones.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ.
I mean, that's the ultimate example of that.
Oh.
Yeah.
On
There
a
you
big
go.
scale, too. That's got to be hard.
The biggest scale.
Oh,
the
God.
biggest scale in the world.
That takes a lot of fortitude to hang in there.
He's not a bad guy.
No,
He just
I don't know. I never
he
heard
had
of
a psychotic break.
Yeah.
But Alex Jones got dumped on his head when he was in high school. He's speaking about getting bullied in high school.
Yeah.
This guy picked him up and pile drived him, slammed
Hey,
him
I
on the
heard-
concrete on his head.
Was it John Ronson that did a documentary about him, or like he did a
Yes.
thing on NPR
John Ronson did a thing with him where they both went to Bohemian Grove.
where he grew up?
This is no. Bohemian Grove is this place in California where all the elites go and they put fucking druid costumes on,
Oh, God.
and they worship Moloch, the owl god.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And Nixon went there, and Reagan
Nixon went there?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were
it's
talking about, like-
Bohemian Grove.
Oh,
You don't know
okay.
what it is?
Nixon and Reagan went
Bohemian
there?
Grove is a famous place where rich world leaders would meet in Northern California, and they literally worship this Moloch, the owl god, and everybody thought it was bullshit. But John Ronson and Alex Jones snuck in, and this is in like the 90s. I want to say this is the 90s. I've been friends with Alex since 1998.
Wow.
That's how I know him. I knew him back when he was protesting George Bush.